It is the Sengoku Jidai. Besieged and surrounded by his enemies, a lord pays a group of men to see his only child to safety. But do they have the skill to ensure her safety? And can they even be trusted? For this is an age of honor and treachery, of blood and valor, of gold and steel. Now available at Amazon, Smashwords, and at studiobrainstorm.net. Links in the description. Last time, Jama, second son of Hante X, despite having renounced all claim to the Chrysanthemum throne, remained determined to usurp his elder brother and become emperor himself. Believing that knowledge would be the key to power, he ensconced himself in the imperial libraries, poring over scroll after scroll of secrets and magics. And then at last, in the year 499 of the Empire, he found what he knew was the key to his goal: the journals of Kuni Nakanu. Nakanu was a crab shugenja back during the reign of Emperor Genji. He is noteworthy for being the one who first discovered and identified the nature of the taint, the morally and spiritually corrosive influence exuded by the Shadowlands. Unfortunately, his attempts to try and control the taint resulted in a minor zombie outbreak that caused massive destruction, and thus his name had been blackened in the memory of the Crab Clan ever since. Still, his discoveries had been of great assistance to Rokugan, and so a copy of his journals had been placed in the Imperial Archives, where centuries later, young Otomo Jama discovered their secrets. He was convinced that Maho was the key to clearing the path to the Imperial throne. There was just one problem. As anyone familiar with the setting of L5R knows, employing Maho means exposing oneself to the taint, and the taint has a spiritually and mentally corrosive effect on the user, eventually driving them to madness. Jama wanted the throne. He wanted it bad, but not so badly that he was willing to trade his sanity for it. Before he could employ evil magic, he must first find a way to safeguard himself and his soul against the corruption of the taint. And, try as he might, he could uncover not even a clue as to how this could be achieved in the Imperial Archives. But Jama was undeterred. If the secret to mastering Maho and avoiding the taint could not be found within the Empire, then he would simply have to look abroad. Although no exact date is given, it is explicitly stated that when Jama decided to go off on his quest, his brother had ascended to the throne. And so, when Jama approached the new Emperor Hante XI for permission to take a diplomatic mission out to the Burning Sands, his brother granted his request, expecting to never see Jama again. Still, he did assign Jama a legion of Imperial Guardsmen in order to help ensure his safety. And so, Otomo Jama departed from the Emerald Empire, accompanied by his bodyguards and his 3 faithful companions, Jamasuru, Asahina Yajinden, and Doji Tsugiko, his bride-to-be. Here the timeline gets a little fuzzy, but it is still worthwhile to stop and consider one of the darker and stranger moments in the history of L5R, the death of the Boar clan. For reasons that have been lost to time, in the year 500, an illegal duel occurred between the prominent lion general Matsu Dainoku and his immediate subordinate, the dragon samurai Mirumoto Choruda. This illegal duel concluded with Dainoku killing Choruda. Only 2 witnessed the crime: a nameless attendant who soon died under violent and mysterious circumstances, and a child, Heiichi Shizugai, son and heir of Boar clan champion Heiichi Batsuda. Of course, Shizugai told his father, who in turn presented the accusation to Emerald champion Doji Shioden. It's also worth noting that the other witness to the duel, that nameless attendant, served in the household of Shioden's wife. Apparently, 2 witnesses were needed to testify in order to have Dainoku convicted without any further legal business. Otherwise, the matter could only be resolved by a duel to the death. A legal one this time. Given the power and influence of Dainoku, it does explain why the attendant died, but the child was spared. assuming Dainoku's involvement, which is a fairly safe assumption. Of course, since Shizugai was a minor, Batsuda would fight on his son's behalf. Alas for the Boar clan, Dainoku won that duel to the death, leaving Shizugai fatherless and the new Boar clan daimyo. A daimyo that nursed in his heart a desire for vengeance. We will never know exactly what kind of form that vengeance was going to take, but the following year it was revealed that the Boar clan had stopped paying taxes to the court, and that it was a result of direct action on Shizugai's part in protest of his father's death. Emerald champion Shioden immediately ordered the Imperial legions to march on the Twilight Mountains, the homeland of the Boar clan. They were to deliver an ultimatum. Mercy and forgiveness would be shown if the child daimyo Heiichi Shizugai committed seppuku. Otherwise, the legions were to eradicate the Boar clan in their entirety. However, when the Imperial messengers accompanying the legions came to deliver their missive to Heiichi Shizugai, they discovered that Shiro Heiichi, the castle of the Boar clan, was deserted. At least, deserted by the living. All the confused and frightened messengers found was a sea of Boar clan corpses. Every last man, woman, and child within the walls was dead, seemingly having cut one another down in a frenzy of madness. This is where a mysterious figure briefly enters the story. Agasha Ryuden, a Shugenja, and Maho Tsukai. And here's where things get a little weird. Because from here, while generally the main events are consistent, several tiny details occur that really contradict one another or don't seem to make sense. Mostly because they're never mentioned again. Case in point, Agasha Ryuden is said to have come under the influence of a Shuten Doji. Given that the Shuten Doji of Regret, the primary architect behind the fall and destruction of the Snake Clan, was sealed away forever by the Phoenix following the 5 Nights of Shame, that leaves only fear and desire, and it's never specified which it is. Anyway, this malignant entity persuaded Ryuden to go to the Twilight Mountains and seek what it called the Blood Ore. And from that point on, it's never mentioned again. So you have to wonder exactly what happened to it, where it went, or what it did. Anyway, Ryuden went to the Twilight Mountains, which again is the home of the Boar clan. Ryuden became a guest of the Boar clan, although once again we have no idea what he did to persuade them to let him into their home. Regardless, he did indeed discover the blood ore that this Shuten Doji is said to have told him of. Then, apparently possessed by the spirit of the first Oni, he was driven mad and proceeded to forge arguably the most infamous evil magical artifact in Rokugan since the creation of the Black Scrolls, the Anvil of Despair. It was the foul and malignant influence of this dread artifact that drove the entire Boar clan to kill each other in a fit of madness. Their souls were spared only by the intervention of the Shakoki Dogu, the mountain spirit who had befriended and kind of kidnapped their crab ancestors centuries ago. Hence, the mountains of bloody corpses that the Imperial envoys discovered when they arrived at Shiro Heiichi. Agasha Ryuden is never mentioned ever again after this, though some sourcebooks say that besides Asahina Yajinden, a dragon helped Otomojama in his studies of forbidden magic, so it could refer to him. Other sources also claim that Yajinden was present both when Ryuden made the Anvil of Despair and at the final destruction of the Boar clan. But of course, since we don't know when he set out with Jama on the expedition beyond the Empire, we can't really say how reliable this is. Anyway, back to our villain protagonist and his not-so-merry band of friends. Apparently, the party had completely underestimated just how harsh the Burning Sands could be. Pretty much all of the soldiers sent with them by the new Emperor Hantei XI died very quickly, and only Yajinden's magic kept him, Jama, Suru, and Tsugiko alive. But although the Crane Shugenja continuously told Jama that they should turn back, the former imperial prince would not hear of it. Evidently, it was find a way to become emperor or die trying. In the end, Jama's persistence would pay off, just in a very, very roundabout way. Right when the 4 travelers were at the end of their strength, they discovered a palace in the midst of the desert. The good news was that the owner of the palace was willing to grant them shelter. Unfortunately, the owner of this palace was also a demon called a Rakshasa, a shape-shifting tiger monster from the Ivory Kingdoms known as Adisaba. It's never explained why Adisaba did this, so I can only presume that it must have been for his own amusement, as he gave Jama, Tsugiko, Yajinden, and Suru free reign of his palace, including his extensive library of magics that had never even been heard of in the Emerald Empire. It was a treasure trove of knowledge that Jama was more than happy to take advantage of. The big problem was that they were imprisoned by a spell that the Rakshasa had cast upon them. If Jama were to flee, he would die and the others would be released. If one of the other three tried to escape, they would live, but the other three would die. And if one of them tried to kill one of the others, then all four of them would die. This did not in any way deter Otomo Jama. After scouring through all of the books and scrolls in Adisaba's library, he did come one step closer to gaining what he sought. For many of those scrolls spoke of a place where he could find the magic he needed to gain immunity from the taint. Medinat al-Salam, the Jewel of the Horizon, a great magical cosmopolitan city in the northwestern deserts. There he would obtain the power he sought. Having discovered what he needed, Jama proceeded to find a loophole in Adisaba's magic by ordering Tsugiko to kill herself. Out of love for her fiancé, the crane did so, freeing her beloved as well as Yajinden and Suru from the magic that imprisoned them. Instead of being angry at the four humans for breaking his spell, it seemed that Adisaba was more impressed than anything else, and he would go on to become an ally of Jama in their next great endeavor. And so, accompanied by their demonic ally, the three Rokugani eventually made it to Medinat al-Salam. And there, in that great city that acted as the crossroads of so many of the Gaijin nations that lived beyond the desert, that Jama found what he was looking for. More specifically, he found who he was looking for. A sorcerer of the Senpet Empire named Chepren. For brevity, think of Medinat al-Salam as a fantasy version of medieval Baghdad during the Islamic Golden Age, and the Senpet as fantasy Egypt. Much to Jama's delight, Chepren, like many Gaijin sorcerers, was intrigued by the potential magics and secrets of the Emerald Empire. And so Jama struck a deal with the Senpet sorcerer. In exchange for a basic working knowledge of how magic worked in the Emerald Empire, as well as the writings of Kuni Nakanu, Chepren would teach Jama the secrets of the Khadi. This was a form of magic in which a sorcerer used his power to keep another person alive while he removed his heart and then placing it in a magic iron box. So long as it remained inside the box, the heart would continue to beat, thus rendering the subject of the Khadi ritual immortal. What's more, the newly heartless person, or Khadi, hence the name of the ritual, would be immune to all magical corruption because that person's soul was now contained within the heart. This was exactly what Otomo Jama had been looking for all this time. If he could become a Khadi, he would be free to use Maho to its fullest extent without any risk of succumbing to the madness and corruption of the taint. There was just one big problem. The Khadi ritual created a powerful magical link between the caster and the subject. Usually, the way that Khadi ceremonies worked is that the caster retained possession of the heart of the person subjected to the Khadi ritual, thus granting the master total dominion over his new heartless immortal slave. But Chepren underestimated Jama's cunning and remained ignorant of his demonic ally, Adisaba. A Khadi ritual was a private affair. Only 3 people were to be present. Chepren himself as the one performing the ritual, Jama as the subject of the ritual, and a witness. Being a shapeshifter, it was child's play for Adisaba to take the place of the witness during the ritual by which Chepren removed Jama's heart. The moment the ritual was completed, Adisaba restrained Chepren, allowing Jama to reclaim his heart, thus becoming a free Khadi. So it was that on that fateful night, Otomo Jama ceased to be. In his place was an undead immortal sorcerer who now called himself by a name that had been given to him by the Gaijin sorcerers of Medinat al-Salam, the name by which he would be known ever after throughout the L5R setting, Iuchiban. Having gained not only immunity from the taint and immortality into the bargain, Iuchiban's first step was to take precautions to ensure the safety of his heart, for if it were ever destroyed, he would die. And so he turned to the ever-faithful Jama Suru. Suru had never possessed any natural aptitude for magic, but during their initial researches in the Imperial Library, he had served as assistant cum guinea pig for Jama and Asahina Yajinden. And as the son of a tiny and minor vassal family of the Phoenix, he had always lived with a sense of inferiority. He had wanted to be great, but there had never been any chance or means for him to do so. This sullen resentment was one of the reasons why he had tackled Otomo Jama to the ground when the two had been children. However, during their initial researches in the Imperial Library, Yajinden had discovered a way by which he could imprint his own considerable magical prowess onto Suru. This had been less out of altruism and more so that Yajinden and Jama could use Suru as a guinea pig, making him perform risky Maho rituals, allowing themselves to avoid the risk of taint. Jama, however, had not minded. For the first time in his life, he had become a being of power and consequence. His loyalty to Iuchiban was absolute, but Iuchiban decided that it wouldn't hurt to reinforce that loyalty with magic. By means of a powerful and terrible ritual, Iuchiban bound the will of Jamasuru to his own, making it impossible for Suru to go against his master. Thus, Iuchiban charged Suru with what would be his most important job: hiding and ensuring the safety of Iuchiban's heart. Then there was the matter of Yajinden, a naturally gifted Shugenja with ambitions of his own, and who did not possess Suru's unquestioning loyalty. Well, that was no problem at all. Iuchiban simply subjected Yajinden to the Kadi ritual, thus making Yajinden immortal while granting Iuchiban possession of his heart, ensuring his obedience. Once the ritual was complete, Iuchiban performed magical injunctions upon Yajinden, forbidding him from touching or even seeking his own heart. Thus, for as long as his immortal existence allowed, Yajinden would live every day knowing that he remained vulnerable to his master. It was at this point that the demon Adisaba fled. Seeing Iuchiban's incredible surge in power, the demon now feared the mortal as a threat to his own existence. Iuchiban was unconcerned. He no longer needed the demon. He had everything he needed to seize his brother's throne, and not only that, effectively reign forever as ruler of the Emerald Empire, with the darkest and most terrible of magics at his command.